Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Wheel of Time recaps here at We Know Scripted TV. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and with me to talk about episode 4, as always, is Grace. How you doing, Grace?
Good. I'm going to be playing 7 different versions of myself today.
Yes, I've got the mustache and the nose prosthetics and the eyebrows.
Right.
And
I'm excited to see old Taran. That's what I'm most excited to see.
What you don't realize is that we have a guest with us who is actually me with a beard. And
I knew it.
With us to talk about episode 4 is DM Philly. It's Rich. How you doing?
I'm so good. I'm wearing my prosthetics so that they can't tell that I'm your clone, Taran. I'm really excited. This is a fun one. I'm psyched to talk about the Wheel of Time anytime, but I'm delighted to be over here breaking it down with you guys this week.
Yes. Well, we are here to talk about episode 4, which I believe is called The Road to the Spear. Oh boy, what an episode. What we do here in the first portion of this podcast, the first half or so, really, we will be entirely book spoiler free. We will be just talking about the episode, maybe the occasional tiny bit of book context, but nothing that would, I think, even remotely be seen as spoilery. And then after we give a warning, we will give some more book context, but even that will not be deep spoilers, is how we're going to do it here on the podcast. But let's just jump straight in, because this was like a very special episode of the Wheel of Time. It was focused entirely on one storyline. And I say one storyline, but it was quite a few of them within the one storyline. And it was, I thought, very good, very fun, and I'm excited to be talking about it. Grace, do you agree?
I totally agree. I mean, this is, I think, why we watch, fantasy TV and get excited about, being specifically stuff that like we've read be adapted onto the screen. This is like a moment, such a pivotal moment, and they decide to spend the whole episode doing it in a way that I thought was executed quite well. It's very, very fun. I think it's like such a pivotal point in terms of like explaining things, even if it is taking me a long time to understand the things that are happening, but it's super important. And so I'm excited to talk about it, and to talk about it with the person who I think it was their love of Wheel of Time that got me into Wheel of Time, Philly. So yeah. You're the Moraine to my Ran. I'm destined to destroy the world, I think, then.
Yeah, I could be the Ran to your Moraine. I'm very down with that. Officially, the man called Prez is the car card over at our podcast, so I don't want to steal his role in that way. I informed you guys that I have come today armed with hyperbole. I really like the Wheel of Time as a book series. I know, Taran, you've read it all. Grace, you're about halfway through. I just think it's a standout in the genre. It is completed, which just gives it a leg up on many of its peers.
Name one other fantasy series that's not completed, Rich.
Seriously, but many of the peers of the Wheel of Time, of its contemporaries at the top of the dog pile in that fantasy genre space, are unfinished works. And so the Wheel of Time is completed. It's completed by the premier American fantasy author of 2025, Brandon Sanderson, who's out there killing it on his own. It's satisfying, but the show has stumbled along the way, and there's been a lot of, I think, fair and unfair criticism leveled at it. And this hour of television was really important. This was a big deal for a lot of people who consider this an important scene. And I just think they hit it out of the park. I've been racking my brain since I watched it, and I think that legitimately I could say this is my favorite episode of fantasy TV that there is. I went back through the Rolodex of like the best Game of Thrones. I thought about what we got over this last year. We're seeing sprawling Middle Earth in these $1 million episodes over at Amazon. We're getting dances of dragons and fire and blood is happening, and some big epic stuff happened over there. But for my value in spending an hour with a fantasy TV show, this was as satisfying as anything ever has been for me. It spoke to me kind of like Kiksuya from Westworld, or The Constant and Lost, even like International Assassin and The Leftovers, of just a bit of a paradigm shift. It is this hyper-focused episode that simultaneously conveys an incredible amount of kind of lore, context about the space that we're existing in, while also advancing the plot and being incredibly like visually and emotionally compelling. It's just the perfect fusion of all the stuff you want in TV, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it was really well done. I mean, part of what I've enjoyed about The Wheel of Time, the show, is the fact that I'm getting to see visually, the things that have existed in my brain for a long time. And I'm not a reader that visualizes very
Mhm.
much. I struggle with that. But seeing Ruidian like on the screen, I was like, that's the place. I didn't even know what it looked like in my head, but that's it. And that felt really cool. And especially in a way where, like, again, like, I don't even know how to visualize a lot of this stuff when I read it in the books. And now I'm seeing it, and I'm seeing it in a way that it felt like it made sense. And I was like, oh, that's what it was like. I was like, when they talked about the pillars, I was very confused, but that makes some sense. And so I thought this was really cool. This is a moment in the books that is, it's not some epic battle. It's not some like dramatic, moment with the characters. It is a twist in the world building.
Mhm.
And, The Wheel of Time was, for me, one of the first book series I read, period, let alone fantasy. But this was definitely the first experience I had reading a series, or even experiencing a story where the world building was sort of a character on its own, a sort of thing that existed on its own. And this being like a plot twist within that felt really cool. Here is a people, a culture that I am learning about over the course of their history, how they got to be who they are, where they are, and the fact that, like, seemingly their roots are the exact opposite of what they are now. And what a cool concept that was to me at the time, and it still is. And of course, it's Brandon Sanderson that's going to finish this series after Robert Jordan passes away. Brandon Sanderson, very well known for exactly this kind of storytelling, as well, this whole idea of like world building as a character. And so I thought it was really cool to be able to experience that in episode form. I think it's a lot of information to convey in such a strange way, and yet they managed to accomplish it. And I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, to the point of Sanderson, he's the guy in the fantasy space these days. And when he speaks about the Wheel of Time, he does so with such affection and reverence for the same sort of thing that you're talking about, Taran, how it informed him as a young man reading the series about how you can weave a tapestry like this, right? Jordan is such a cultural ambassador. He draws from so many of our kind of real histories in the world of Earth to build this tapestry, to weave the threads of his pattern together into the story. And unlike somebody like Martin, who's really invested in kind of classical mysteries, who killed who and what's going to happen here, these mysteries of the world building that Jordan presents are really complex. And then he gives you these moments like the walk through the glass pillars that reveal so much context. And really what gets me is, we talk, especially in the fantasy space, you have to do this world building. And that can come off as a lot of exposition. As season 3 of The Wheel of Time, as we get into Aiel culture, there are more than a few instances where we're getting these kind of exposition dumps, and it's not the most elegant lore delivery system. But this, I don't mean to beat the horse, but it just felt like such a perfect fusion of the medium of television, of a 66-minute episode of TV using moving pictures and sound to create this incredibly emotionally compelling hour that conveys deep information that is relevant to what we've seen and will be relevant to anything we're lucky enough to get going forward. And in that way, like, they did it. They showed. They didn't just tell us what we had to do. They showed us something that made us care about what they're telling us. And that's a win. That's not easy to do, I think, in any kind of television production, let alone an adaptation where you're handcuffed by so many other kind of obstacles,
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super interested to hear about people who are like not book readers, and how this works, because it still is like a fair bit, and it took me even like, as somebody who's
Dense.
read through this, to like be going back. I think specifically, which we'll get into like more details, but the scene where it's like that version of like that ancestor of Rand, plus with like basically Perrin and Matt counterparts, who I'm like, oh, like that guy, I can't, like, are they both played by the actors who play the other? Like, it looks like Donald Finn is playing the like Matt stand-in, but then not Marcus Rutherford playing the parent. And so I'm like a little like, okay, like I'm, and also trying to like remember what I remember from reading the book, so I'm like trying to kind of do it. I do wonder how much like, um, whether this episode, like, is there going to be a million like searches of like, what does this mean on the, like that sort of thing. But outside of all that, I think it is like extremely well done in the way that it feels emotionally like powerful. I think as we're like following Rand and everything that's happening, with also dropping us in and giving this like sort of unveiling and history of the world that is arguably, I don't know if you two have this, but it's like, this is where I sometimes get like hung up when I'm thinking about like doing Rich, like Dungeons and Dragons world building, where I'm like, I want to create my own world. And I get stuck on the idea that like, I have to be as thorough and deep as like, Tolkien was in terms of like inventing language. And I feel like I have to understand why all these people are here and whatever. And it's like the thing that it's so satisfying to see that skill set be done so well. This idea that you're talking about, Taran, about the way in which like this thing about the world makes so much sense. But now that we know, like, we didn't know it before we knew it. Now that we know it, it adds this whole layer of complexity to the thing, which is that the Aiel were protectors of artifacts and were pacifists basically, and how world events ultimately shaped like the differing of that path. I thought it was like it's a really excellent episode of television. I don't know if I'm quite ready to call it the best episode of fantasy I've ever seen, but I have to agree that it's probably up near the top, Rich. So
objective statements are difficult, so I'm not trying to convince anybody else that it's the best, but it is, I think, unambiguously my favorite. And in the same way that so many other shows, I mean, it's paying itself off on everything that we've done leading up to this moment. As we sit here to record right now, over on r/fantasy, Wheel of Time season 3 episode 4 is incredible. It's like the #1 post. I know that a lot of people are really hooking in and identifying this is a standout of the series. This is it seems to be the consensus in the early hot takes that it's the best episode the show has produced thus far. And in the quick scans that I have done of TV only watchers, there is some confusion as to the density of information that is conveyed, but most of it seems to be answering questions that are like asked at the beginning of the episode. And so I think that way it feels a little bit more contained. And I didn't see as much confusion as I expected from show only readers, watchers.
I mean, to be honest, when I read this, I was confused when I read it.
Confusing when I read it as well. This was an immediate, like, I'm gonna have to read that again.
Yeah. Especially, I will say, especially because many of my rereads have been audiobook. It's way harder with the audiobook because the shifting perspectives can happen without any indication. All of a sudden, I'm a different person, and I was like, wait, where am I again? But I thought this worked really well. It is, there are some details left out, but I think that for the most part, you're getting all of it in quite frankly, a more digestible way that is a bit easier to understand than it was in the books. But the books have the advantage of you being able to like stop and really like pay attention and read every line and reread it. I think something I've seen before is like some people will go back and read it in reverse order, just to like lay the timeline in their heads a little better.
Chronologically Ruidion. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I thought, like I said, like seeing it visualized was so much fun for me. It's to the point where I was like, wow, it's weird that they're not naked, because that's that's the thing. That's what they do in the books. Listen, anytime we're talking about like, oh, what happened? What's different about this than the books? It's like, well, they're probably naked in the books.
They are probably naked in the books. There's a lot of nudity happening, but very comfortable in Randland without clothes.
Is it worth us doing a little bit of like, not a full plot recap, but a little bit of like, setting a little bit of like, this is what happened, is that worth it at all for us to do?
Yeah, I think we can.
I think I'm most ill-equipped maybe to do it, but I could try.
I am a verbose individual, if that's not clear to anybody who's already heard me, and it will not be a concise plot recap, so I'm not going to volunteer.
Well, okay. Let me
Let's
give
do
an
it
attempt
together.
here.
Let's do it together. We'll chime in when we need to. Yeah.
Okay.
Please point out anything that I'm off on this. But basically, if we want to do this chronologically, at the time of around the time of the breaking, you see that first. I guess the last scene you see, which with like the big sphere that has a name I don't remember.
It's called the Shram. It is. It's like a research center at this like city of science, the Don, which is irrelevant, really.
Yes, and it might have been easy to forget, possibly because it's been like 4 years or whatever. But there was a scene I think in season 1 where we went backwards in time, and look at all of the technology, right? This is very much it's the wheel of time. It's all about the passing of time and sort of things circling around again. And so the implication here obviously is that the breaking of the world destroyed all of the technology. They are now in like a different stage of existence. So this is back at the time that the Forsaken were originally alive, and you see Lanfear, who is not yet Lanfear, talking to Rand's ancestor, which did make me think like it would be funny if she recognized him, but obviously it's been a while. He does look quite similar. And she's talking about like she's essentially a scientist. She's trying to discover a new method of like accessing the one power. She calls it the true power, which is gender agnostic. It doesn't matter what gender you are, anybody can access it. And this is like a great way to like advance society, right? There's a thin portion of the fabric of the weaving of the whatever, I don't remember, but they're gonna drill through it, and they're gonna bore a hole. And so Rand's ancestor goes down, they do their little farming, they sing their song, and then this doesn't look great. It destroys the Sharam, and there's a big like crack in existence.
The sound design right there, guys. That's the stuff where it's like so many little details of those moments, and to like hear the song. It's so great. I loved it.
Yep.
Yes. So this is kind of like the inciting incident of the entire plot of the show and series. This hole has been bored. The Dark One now has access to their realm of reality, and so this is. Now he's like touching things and doing bad things, and the Forsaken eventually swear to him, and then, as we saw in season 1, the Aes Sedai, men and women, are going to try to seal this bore, and in doing so, they end up accidentally sort of destroying the world because the Dark One has tainted Saidin. And
that was all Luz Theron. We should put it on him. It wasn't all the guys today. It was that one guy, Luz Theron.
Yeah. The dragon, the original dragon, Luz Theron. And so then all men go insane through the taint in the one power, and they have to essentially be put down. That's when we see the sort of the second to last one, where the Aiel are being instructed to keep this Sangreal safe. It's very vital. It is the strongest female version of this like power amplifying device, and they're being entrusted to go find a place where they can be safe and keep it safe, because there's too much chaos going on. The world is breaking. They're trying to find the men. They can't even trust all the women, because look at what Lanfear did. And so they go off. They swear an oath. They're going to keep this thing safe. They're going to stick to the way of the leaf, the pacifist way.
And this is important, right? This is the oath. I have seen some of the questions from show-only viewers of like, but what is the oath? I still don't understand the oath breakers. This is the oath. They make this blood oath that their ancestors will follow the way of the leaf, which is way back season 1 stuff. It's tough because we have to set these ideas up so early in the show that they will hew to this ideology of pacifism going forward in the Way of the Leaf, right?
Yes, and in season 1, if you recall, Egwene and Perrin met up with some Tinkers, otherwise known as the Tuatha'an, and they talked to them about being pacifists and how they would not defend themselves, and that's what we saw in the beginning of this season. We saw some dead Tinkers who the Aiel said, like, oh, the only thing more disgraceful than not defending yourself is killing somebody who wouldn't defend themselves. And then lo and behold, there's a connection there, right?
And they refer to the Tinkers as the lost ones. It is this whole idea of like their
Right.
lost culture, right? It really is like fascinating in the layering.
Mm-hmm. And so the Way of the Leaf survives with the Tuathon, with the Tinkers, and that's what we see, I think, in the next most recent version. The old man and his grandchild,
Who I just would note is the same old man. This is Jonai, who like leaves with the tree. The idea is this is him many years later as an old man with his grandfather, still like the man who was there when the oaths were sworn. And that's why it's so important. And his grandfather staying with, or his grandson, I should say, Aegon staying with him matters so much, right?
Yes,
I think that's easy to like lose in the translations, but a lot of these were the same characters at different stages in their lives.
that actually
I didn't know
was
that.
lost on me.
Yeah. So like if we're like name checking from the books, I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but this is Jonai, and he is explicitly the same guy who rides out of Paradise with the tree in his metal cart. And I know that if there's a horse attached to the metal cart in the books, all the technology fails and they have to strap horses to their cars, and it's very funny. And so this was just a weird moment that felt wildly incongruous on the show, and I want to acknowledge.
Yeah, it wasn't like this is their version of like technology at that time. What I think this was supposed to represent is that, like, yeah, all technology is failing, and so they're having to like reconfigure. This is supposed to be the start of like, the technology not working anymore. So we see that there are Aiel who are saying we're not going to do this anymore. Like this quest, this oath we've sworn doesn't make any sense. We're going to leave. They become, I believe, the Tuathon, the Tinkers.
Mhm.
They're going to hold to the Way of the Leaf, but they are not going to hold to the oath to protect the tree and the Sangrar.
And thus they become the lost ones. They are
Right.
these Aiel who wander away from their people, and Jonai will like go forward with Aegon, and this little kid Aegon is the old man of the next set of scenes.
And so then we are going to see in the next most recent one a different sect essentially breaking off, and this is when there are a portion of these Aiel who decide we are not going to sit by and not defend ourselves anymore, and we need to protect our own. We see that they're in defending themselves. They end up killing some of these bandits who captured these girls, and they are exiled. Do not show your face. You are not Aiel. And they decide that they are going to, veil themselves. They're not going to use swords because, it's trying to be tricky with their oaths, right? Like the swords are the only thing swords are meant for is killing, whereas spears can be used for like other things. And so, but what they're gonna do is they're gonna protect the Aiel that can't protect themselves. That is their original sort of goal. And these are the Aiel that survive to today, essentially. But they forget where they came from until they go to Viridian.
Which is the first of those flashbacks, right? It's Mandane. I love Yosha playing all these parts. The prosthetic mileage may vary, but this is one thing that's really taken me about the show, just as a television show, is the way that this young cast, I think, have matured and kind of matriculated. Like Yosha owning space opposite Rosamund Pike is like, the kid's holding his own. And I think this is we talk about shows like, Orphan Black and Tatiana Maslany, like playing all these different parts. This is a complex episode and like a pretty heavy lift for a relatively young and new kind of untested actor. But I thought the kid just knocked it out of the park, right? I mean, there's such small fleeting scenes and there's only going to be so much in them. But I thought he did just a great job owning the space and like conveying characterization of these individuals through his past. I really am taken with a lot of the young actors, but Yosha, especially this season, is come alive, I feel like.
I agree with that. I also think, the prosthetic thing, I would agree that like maybe if there's a little bit of like, you want like all the stuff you want to take really seriously, and then you're like pulled out of it a little bit with him. But I also don't know that I don't know if you can sort of effectively make the point about like the ancestry and the lineage of these people without it being Yosha playing all these different versions. Like I think that's such an effective way to show sort of the through line of the show in a way that I think is works really well. So I kind of like I give them a bit of a pass for being like, does it like look a little silly sometimes? Yeah,
I
but
really
whatever.
liked Taylor threw some darts at some of the prosthetics, but I'm with you again where I say like this is such an effective episode of television, and you have to shift the priorities when you're translating from the medium of text to screen. And this just was such a great realization. You know, it's a clever use of your resources to bring Yosha himself back across time this way. It conveyed so well, and to the cinematography and like the editing of it all. A lot of like flicker energy tired as we're like shifting back and forth between the flashes, but the way that we're able to really visually convey the metaphor that as Rand takes these steps forward and moves backwards in time, he's seeing these memories, but he's seeing the memories that his ancestors saw, that he and Mandane kind of like merge and they move back together, and then they continually are moving back, and there's this deeper level of context. And as good as the visions were, what really sent me is the scene at the end with Avienda as he says, "I'm sorry." It's such a small moment, but to the acting and the power of seeing it visually portrayed, Taran, on the screen rather than reading it, it's such an emotional moment where you feel like Rand finally is getting it. This pressure, this responsibility. There's so many things he can't be, but he can do this one thing for these people who have suffered for 3,000 years in this threefold land, waiting for this moment. I just thought it was a great stinger punctuation for what was a pretty powerful episode.
Yeah, and I think something that I never really even, I don't think it was like super explicit in the books or even meant necessarily intended in the books, but like I really enjoyed the we talked last week about how Rand is just a farmer who just wants to be a farmer. That's kind of the entire thrust of the point of the book, is that Robert Jordan wanted to create a chosen one who didn't want to be the chosen one.
That's the central tension. That's the conflict in his heart, what we want versus like who you are and what you can have. It's so great.
Exactly. And so to go back all the way to before any of this happened, and he was just a content farmer, like his ancestors, just a content farmer, I thought was such a cool connection, in a way that, like, when I was reading the books, I always, thought of his ancestry as the Aiel, as like, these pacifists / warriors. But like, if you go back even further, yeah, there is that farming connection, that sort of just like, I just want to do my own thing and be content in my place kind of thing. And instead he is, thrust into this position, to have to be something else. And so very cool stuff. So obviously the Rudian itself is the city that was built, I believe, by like the remaining, I believe they are called Gen Aiel in the books. I don't know if that was mentioned in the show.
It is not, but those are basically the original Aiel. When Latra says that the true Aiel are all dead, that you've forgotten too much, this is why you come to learn your past. She's talking about the Gen Aiel. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So they are like the last remaining ones, but they have all like died out at this point, is what they're being told. And so the idea of going through the pillars is to give just the clan chiefs and the, actually don't remember how much the wise ones discover, but the clan chiefs for sure go through the pillars. They learn the truth, but they're not allowed to tell anyone. And so they go through these pillars, and you can see that it destroys some of them. And we see that the brother of the guy from outside is in here, and he's like tearing his eyes out, because the truth of their origins is so antithetical to their belief system and what they, think they should be. And so to learn where they came from, that they are in fact oath breakers, when they hold oaths to be of such high importance, like literally kills them sometimes. And
I
so
thought
yeah.
that was a really important note. I don't know how much it conveyed, Grace, that it's not like they're being assaulted. The magic of Ruidion is not killing these people. They are literally like killing themselves. They cannot live with the truth that is revealed to them. It breaks their entire internal sense of self. And I find that very poignant, this particular moment in time in our history, to reflect on a little bit, our ability to reevaluate what we think we know and where we stand, and something that Prez noted in our coverage, which I thought was just a great insight, the way that the wise ones are expected to look forward into the future. They're going to see these variations of the future so that they can care for and kind of shepherd the people to reach what may occur, to make the best choices to preserve the Aiel as a culture, but that the clan chiefs have to look back so they don't repeat these mistakes, so that they have that context, and gender, like as a construct, as a fluidity, like I'm there, but Jordan as an author certainly is interested in this dynamism between the masculine and the feminine and the kind of energy there. And I find it interesting that we layer these kind of paternal and maternal roles on the wise ones and the clan chiefs, and the kind of responsibilities they have, that the more like violent men are expected to learn from their mistakes, whereas the maternal like mother figures have to learn about the potential failings of the future to care for the children, to care for the flock. It's all very layered in a way that I find really satisfying to chew on.
I think in terms of the piece about the men who are going through and can't sort of sustain it, this is a thing I talked about last week. And when I was talking with Rosamund Pike, it feels like this is like the thing that she has like so centrally focused on, that I think is a really powerful theme, is the idea of duty and responsibility, and then the weight of that and the consequences of needing to be the person you are. Even in this episode that's so focused on Rand, obviously, and then Moraine as well, you also have that with Avienda, who suddenly has, she's going to go, she's going to have her spear broken, and she's going to go become a wise woman. That's a thing that she doesn't necessarily want to do, but realizes she's going to have to do it. And I do feel like that theme plays out particularly strongly. It's a thing that's, I think, really effective about the almost like the prophecy notion thing of like, who can make it out. It's not about, are you literally physically strong enough to make it through past the crystals. It's, can you sort of, bear and hold on to this responsibility of being the person who has to see what is the history of your people, and then be able to like lead those people after you come out through that journey. And I actually think that, like, just to talk about Rand and Yosha for a second, I also think the result of this, the ending, is like it says so much about Rand. I do feel like he can be somebody who, I think more so from the books than from the show, probably can be a, is this fair? Can be annoying. He can be a little, it's like, yeah, bro,
it's huge,
like,
like
come on,
Anakin Skywalker energy.
Darth
He's like a
Rand,
whiny
yeah.
teenager a lot of the time. He's complaining, and it is that central tension of like, you can't have what you want. Go tell any teenager they can't have what they want and see what you get in response, right?
And so this moment when he realizes, like, okay, like I think I get it now. I think it's really powerful, and it is a really strong character moment, Taran, I think, for Rand.
Yeah. And I think that it also, like, this is a great moment for Rand and Moraine. There has been a lot of tension between the two of them. She is very explicitly manipulating him in various ways, and he, that he does not like that. He doesn't know all the ways that she's manipulating him, but he certainly can see that she is, or trying to, and is trying to extract some promises from her. She's like, I'm not going to be able to promise you that I'm just going to let you, just do this. And then at the end of the episode, him waiting for her, carrying her back, it felt like a moment for their relationship that has the potential to change their dynamic, which I think is very interesting. But I think, speaking of Moraine, I thought that Moraine's visions were, they weren't like the central part of this episode,
No,
but the
but they
way that
were
they
awesome.
did them, I thought was incredible.
I cannot wait
The
to talk to her about how many times she has to be slit in the throat by Natasha O'Keefe. It's many times, Taran.
the spinning
Yeah.
was so effective to
Yeah.
convey just like how disorienting it, because it felt like the second we get into that, I felt myself just like losing my grounding as like they were spinning through variations of the future of different things that could happen. And I thought it was just a perfect way of conveying how she was feeling. And when, to the point where like when you go and you see Rand interact with Avienda and she's like, yeah, Moraine's still there, you're like, oh my god. Like
Yeah.
this whole time.
Is huge Doctor Strange vibes. I mean, it really, what I love about it, it's such brilliant cinematography because we're able to convey a lot quickly. It's literally moving like a wheel when we think of wheels rolling forward on a car, but it's not a wheel, Grace. As Don Draper might note, it's like a carousel, right? And it's moving like that carousel through, but it's such a, to your point, it's this powerful like visual disorientation that immediately pulls you into it. It's got this kinetic energy as you're watching that I felt so drawn into that. And Natasha O'Keefe like is stealing every scene that she's in the show. The two of them together, I think, are incredible. And as fleeting as all of Moraine's visions were, they really conveyed a lot. They were powerful. And just to note, like, we don't see this in the book. We acknowledge that like Moraine does a thing, but this is new for us. And it was so satisfying, which just reiterates what I was saying earlier. Like, this really is the episode that defines, this is why you adapt a series like this, to hit these kind of moments. And they just nailed it so well. But I can't echo your sentiments more, Taran. I thought it was a brilliant use of the camera to like show this crazy moment.
Well, last week too, Taran, we get through a little shade on the show where we were like, the CGI in that first scene, there's some that looked amazing and there's some that like, whatever.
Fair.
And I think I said like, well, if they choose to spend all this money on like costuming and like there's set pieces and stuff, I think that's so much more important than like the moment a character
The
gets
fire
cut in half.
effects.
And you said rightly, like, you could just not do it in the show, and I'm like, yeah, that's fair. Then this week happens, I'm like, the scene of her like float, like the two of them, her and Avienda floating in the rings looks incredible. It looks so
it's
good.
A great metaphor Prez pointed out to the throwing themselves in the river, that women's circle kind of episode 1 moment of surrendering to the weaves. And that, again, that masculine, feminine, the difference between Sidene and Sidar, that the Aes Sedai and the female channel are surrender. And like Logain tells Rand, you don't surrender, you grab it, you take it, you have to hold it. And that is an important dynamic in the ways that they're going to engage with the weaves going forward.
Yeah, we also get that scene in the beginning of the episode before they enter the city with Lan and Rand, where they're talking about the sword fighting and growing up with Tam, his father, sword master, who taught him about the flame and the void, which I know a lot of book readers have been waiting for. This is like a very in the books, you're in Rand's head. And so this comes up a lot sooner, that like he has this concept of the flame and the void, which is something that he uses to center himself. And so very, I think gratifying thing for book readers, but also just like a cool concept to introduce into the show.
Really, I mean, the mirroring between the Wheel of Time and Dune is strong. I know that you have become quite affectionate towards Dune in recent years, Grace, but the whole notion of like the Kwisatz Haderach and like the genetic memory looking back is all right there. But all of this really got me too. The flame and the void always speaks to me a little bit like Paul's mantra, fear is the mind killer, and this notion of like closing everything out around you. It's a thing that's been like notably absent, I think, for a lot of book readers, because it offers this direct juxtaposition to picture a flower bud with the Aes Sedai kind of means of manifesting channeling, the way that Nynaeve keeps bouncing off of that, this kind of, again, male side of the flame in the void. It just is a cool shout out. It's one of the Easter eggs that I thought was delivered pretty elegantly without feeling like it was forced in, like a Mandarb joke with no context or whatever, you know?
Mm.
Yeah.
And I would say the end of this episode, like I said, was just super powerful. I really like the way that they did it. You know, showing Lan and Egwene both struggling to not rush in, and the just like how much time has passed. It's been 2 days since Avienda came out. It's been 7 days since they went in, and then to just a completely dialogue free scene at the end of Rand carrying Moraine out, and the like little interactions and sort of like the body language that exists there, I thought was really a really effective way of ending the episode. I assume that coming into next week's episode, we'll get a bit more like fallout and explanation and stuff like that. But I thought it was the perfect way to end this episode.
I also, just on the note of things that I think look really cool, and I didn't actually ever think about how it actually works, is the actually being marked with the dragon on both arms.
like that?
I thought it looks so cool. I mean, I know we get the one clan chief, we see his one arm and then learn that like the dragon reborn will have two. But when they actually do it, it's like, oh, that looks super rad. That's super cool.
It was important too, because it could have looked so cheesy. That's one of these moments that like you really could lose people after like this whole cool 40 minutes of like walking back through history, and then he gets some like carnival level tattoos on his arms. But I thought it looked awesome the way like the skin burns in. And then the other note, it's not book stuff at all. It's all like kind of the context of this episode when Moraine talks about the fog feels dry. It feels like leaves moving through, and there's that notion of that literally physically marking him as the dust is like clinging to the girls' faces in the rings, Avienda and Moraine. Now it's like literally burning itself into his flesh. He is marked by this experience. Really cool stuff. Yep.
The tree weavings that like with the sangreal and the wise woman stuff, I thought all looked really good. And actually the other piece that I thought was really well done in terms of like editing and cinematography is the ways in which the way that they like Rand is basically for the most part doing the same thing, which is like walking and pushing and crawling to like against the wind, like that's sort of what it looks like, it feels like. And the way that they can still like take moments from each individual person and have it be like putting their hands on the ground or a step forward, and it being like almost like the like almost like not staticky, but the like quick back and forth images, flicker. Yeah, I thought looked really impressive and was really well done. So.
That's what I'm saying. I thought it was just such an effective way to convey that he is walking with his ancestors into the past, right? That once he like kind of breaches each one of those scenes, we can presume that some of the people in those scenes did walk past, right? And I just thought it's great. And that connective tissue, I think, is really easy to overlook the thread from scene to scene because the names are so fleeting. In half of them, you get one person like, oh, old man Adon. And then you realize in the next scene, he's yelling for his grandson, Adon, where are you? And as you start to put that together, I think it creates a pretty powerful through line. They omitted a lot of scenes there, not a lot. There's 9, I think, in the books. And there's a bit more Aiel lore. Like we learned why they use the spears. We learned about the cotton sword, how they pull their veils up in front of their faces. Hide your face from me, stranger. My son had a face like that once. I don't want to see it on a killer, right? A lot of the dialogue pulled right off the page using Jordan's words, and I thought it was just delivered really well. You had so many small bit actors, extras, right? These like guest parts that are coming in for these little beats of like that kid's mother and the grandfather. And I thought they all delivered really effectively. Like you could have lost a lot of power in any one of those segments, but they all were pretty strong across. The final note I had is because I saw some questions about it. The old woman, Latra, who summons the columns. This is the same woman from the like season 1, episode 10, Cold Open, where we do go back in the past with Luz Theron. She's like the analog for the Amelin seat at the time. We've seen her on the show before, L'Atre de Posay, as the Tamerlin seat. And I think a lot of folks were like, who's this old lady? And there's a little bit more context, I guess, in the show for you.
Also, in this episode, she's the one that hands off the
absolutely,
the Sangreal to the deep ancestor previously. Aes Sedai, long lived, at least at that time. And in general,
are people mad about bisexual Rand or gay Rand?
I saw my favorite Reddit comment already this morning was Rand's bisexual ancestor is going to be my personality for the next 3 months. So I think that there's a lot of fanfare. Taylor identified that moment as magnificent, that all will be well, and all things will be well. The idea is that, you know, I talk about Jordan as this ambassador of culture, the whole thing of Ji'ito, and we talk about it very early on in the servants, that it's like counting coup in the Native American culture of the Plains tribes once upon a time. There's so much that Jordan is kind of like pulling in here, but Taylor loved the idea that that phrase, which carries across the generations of Aiel, was not some grand proclamation, was not some statement of leadership. It wasn't an oath. It wasn't important. It's a small exchange to like give comfort to a loved one in turmoil. And that exchange, like, it sticks, it's sticky, it lingers, and that becomes culture over time, right? And that's so much of what Jordan is interested in as he writes this scene. How does a culture come to be? To like bring it back to what you talk about, Grace. First of all, I'm here to disabuse you of the notion, as any would-be dungeon master, that you need to build a whole world to run D&D.
I don't know.
You start with a village and you build backwards. We don't all need to be Tolkien, but the idea that Jordan wants to examine, how does a culture come to exist? Let's go back and look at all the little pieces. And that little exchange of Rand and his lover, of Rand's ancestor and his lover, all will be well, carrying across. It feels so tangible and ephemeral at the same time of our history, right? We live in this world where like 150 years from now, will anybody in your family even know your name? Will they know you existed? Are we more than dust in the wind? I don't mean to get too existential, but like that's where these kind of thoughts take me, and I kind of love it, you know.
Yeah, and another aspect of it, in one of the first like flashbacks about like those who don't do this will be forgotten. This idea that like being forgotten is such a bad thing, and of course that's sort of the entire culture. I think another small bit. And I guess we are doing a little bit of extra book context here. Still spoiler free. I think this is all, you know, perfectly. It's just providing some extra context. But like, I believe from my memory, one of the reasons why the Aiel were trusted with this task is because like there was this story about like thousands of Aiel trying to reason with like a mad male channeler, and like not fighting him, just peacefully being like trying to reason with him. And of course they, I believe, ultimately fail. But like in doing so, they sort of like kept him busy and allowed a lot of people to escape, and it cost their lives in the process. And the Aes Sedai were very sort of like impressed by their bravery and commitment to the way of the leaf, and their sort of their beliefs and the good that they could do. And that's sort of why they are entrusted with this this task.
I love that. It speaks to that beat with L'Atre, Grace, where she's saying Kalendor is sealed in an unbreachable fortress. That Angreal is entrusted to war and fear. Let this one be entrusted to peace. Take it. And the fact that they're like, we will hold it until you need it back, right? It's such a cool notion. And again, like echoing this kind of like paternal, maternal, these different roles and the importance of different roles. I think it's easy to come across an idea like the way of the leaf, pacifism, and to write it off, especially in a world that is fraught with peril like ours is, where somebody needs to like stand up and fight for what needs to be fought for, right? But I think that also in that way, there's something so powerful about acknowledging that you need people to like pass over the sword for the plowshare. You need somebody to like be there after the fighting is done to care for the children, right? And if nobody ever chooses peace, there will never be be peace. There is power to that. That's what's so kind of compelling about the discourse, that if we all could cleave to the way of the leaf, the world probably would be a little bit better, right? But as long as there's like one evil soul who will not comply, is that even a reasonable worldview, or is that just like crazy talk, right? And that's grist for the mill. That's the stuff that I love in the fiction that I look for, you know.
Yeah, it's a very fun point to be at in the show, because I do feel like it really like opens up really like the themes of the show. It's such a pivotal moment, as we've been talking about. So yeah,
And it was exciting.
It was good.
It was very, very good. I think, you know, aside from the prosthetics, which I did occasionally have issue with,
and I don't get the Matt Perrin thing, where it's like they're basically Matt and Perrin, but they're not played. I think only one is played by.
I don't think it is even played by Donald Finn, is it? It didn't look like it. I thought there were three different guys.
Yeah,
that guy looks so much like Donald.
He did, and there's a clear mirroring. This is a thing where I think when you read it, it doesn't play that way at all. But when I saw it, I also felt that way. We didn't even acknowledge it on our podcast, so I'm glad that we're talking about it. But I think it's just a fun, like, oh, you see, there are neither beginnings nor endings to the turning of the wheel of time, but this is a beginning.
Yeah. Sorry, John. What was your other gripe?
I feel like I would have liked a little bit more explanation about Avienda's role in all of this. You know, it felt a little abrupt to sort of be like in the middle of a fight, like, hey, you must now give up your spears. Was like, because is she in trouble for fighting, or is this an existing thing? What is going on? I think you're meant to be asking some of those questions, but I do think that like. I think it would have been nice to have a little bit of extra context there in this episode, so that you're not quite as sort of lost as to what the point of all of that was. I'm sure they're going to give more context eventually, probably soon. But that was a little piece before they got into the meat of it that I was like, well, are we going to explain this a little bit here?
I totally agree. I think that a little. I mean, I think what's happened on the show is that there are so many characters, and so
it's a big ensemble.
It's a huge ensemble, and so I agree with you that I think we should have got more, and I can also understand where they're like, it's all like, oh my god, we forgot to do Avienda's wise woman stuff, and now I guess we just got to do it now. But yeah, I agree with you.
It feels like structurally every season has like 2 hyper-focused character episodes, right? Like last year we got Nynaeve and the Arches, we got Egwene with Rhaena and the Shan-Chan, and these were like really focused character episodes. And so this is obviously like big Rand energy. I know a lot of Rand stans out there have been lamenting the kind of lack of attention for their central protagonist of the story. But I would say to those who have like completed the story, it's not always just about Rand. It's about all of them. And in that way, I hope we do get some attention on Avienda. She's such a compelling character. I really like what Aiel Spart's doing in the role. It's very fun. I mean, I felt like there was enough context there, but I've also read the book way too many times that exists in this headspace. So I think it's a fair critique. My only critique is, and it's a consistent one from those first 3 episodes, when you were making a pilgrimage into the deep desert, Egwene Alvear, why did you choose black leather as your wardrobe styling? Because that feels very unrealistic. Like Egwene is a pretty pragmatic woman from the 2 Rivers. That seems crazy. I saw the Friends episode with Ross in his pants. I don't think it's a good choice, man.
I mean, it's still better than being naked. So
yeah,
definitely still one up on the books.
I'll give you that.
So all right, anything else from the episode that we should talk about before we go even deeper into book spoileriness?
I don't think so. I think we've covered most of it.
Yeah, my final thoughts are just, again, like I really just was so satisfied. And I think so many book readers that have been waiting for a more loyal adaptation are feeling deeply satisfied with this episode. I like a lot of the additions. I think that the team is getting to a point where they're bringing in good ideas that build on Jordan's ideas rather than like deviate. And the execution of this was just great. I hope it garners enough attention, goodwill, and fanfare that Jeff Bezos signs a check and we get a season 4. Anybody who's like listening to this podcast, go convince 5 people you know to watch The Wheel of Time and tell them to convince 5 people. Let's get this pyramid scheme going. I need more.
What's interesting is I believe they're doing a bunch of press in the next like 2 weeks. So I believe that there's like
Good choice.
I believe there's a fan event that Rosamund Pike is going to do, and also just I believe I'm booked in. Just the breaking news. I believe I'm talking with Rosamund Pike. Schedules can always change. Talking with her again next week, so we shall see. But it feels like they're like they know they have some momentum. Obviously, I guess the other piece that we joked about last week there is like, and we haven't made the joke yet, but we are halfway through the season. So,
we are, and it's crazy. I mean, I don't mean to be like a doomsayer, right? But the show is not renewed. The numbers are down. This is not a Game of Thrones ecosystem where season 3 is like popping off. Game of Thrones, it took till season 4. So we're in this really tough state because I think that critically it's getting a lot of great attention this season. I think everybody writing about the show agrees on one sentiment. It is leveling up season after season. It's incrementally getting better, whether they want to call it the best fantasy episode of all time or not. That's up to them. But I think that a lot of people watched this one, really saw a great execution of the idea, saw justification to move further with it. And I think that like the fate of this show hangs on the edge of a knife in the next couple of weeks. And it's about the numbers. It's not just like the Reddit searches and the social media bombs. Like, I don't know, man. I've been saying on our podcast, like you headed off to work for the day. Maybe your dog wants to watch the Wheel of Time on a loop while you're at the office. Like Amazon needs the numbers. The numbers are down, not like catastrophically, but they're lower. Like it's attrition season to season. And that's part of, I think, the streaming dynamic to a degree, but that is not the ideal situation to get more of this show. And it's finally hitting its stride. So I just really want to like do my part to hype it up and cheerlead. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not even the kind of show where it's like, let them finish it out. Like they're not even halfway through their
not even
8
close.
seasons that they theoretically have planned for. So it's definitely the sort of thing where I imagine that the idea of this was, let's give it a few seasons to see if it pops off, and it's done well. But it has not popped off, and it has not increased viewership. It has been going down. So this, I wouldn't be surprised if it was.
I'm definitely existing in a paradigm where it is not coming back. This is all we'll get. And that being said, I can walk away from the show happy with this hour. Like it was worth 3 seasons, I think, for me to get this. And I'll be disappointed if it doesn't get renewed. But I just say it for folks that are maybe like casually paying attention and like, oh yeah, I like that show. I hope there's more of it. Do your part.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into some spoiler stuff then. If you're going to bounce out now, thank you for joining us. We'll be back next week to talk about episode 5 of The Wheel of Time. In the meantime, you can also check out the Taste Makers podcast, where we talk about all the new shows coming out, all of that good stuff. And Rich, if people want to listen to more of your thoughts on The Wheel of Time, where can they find it?
Oh, at Screen and Page, Screen and Page podcast. So at Screen Page Pod is all of our social medias. Go give us a follow on those. You'll see everything that we're doing. We're talking about the Wheel of Time season 3. We got Myths and Legends, our Wheel of Time book club. We kind of stalled out in the middle of book 2, but that will be coming back soon. Taylor and I with What Did I Miss, doing old movie rewatch podcast. Go hang out over there. We're always having fun.
All right. Well, let's get into it then. More spoilery stuff. We talked last week about Matt's role in all of this. That in the books, Matt is there with them. He also goes to Ruidian. He has his own experience. He goes through a little door, and in the show he's not there. And honestly, I feel like that made sense to me.
It's better. It's better.
Matt being there would have felt weird in the show, I think. From like in the books, you're in Matt's perspective as you go in. He has his own little door experience first, and then Rand has his thing. It pacing wise, it just doesn't work like that in a show. And I think the idea of Rand and Moraine going in together and having an experience together made more sense to me, especially like with the direction of their relationship. So I did enjoy Moraine getting the like Matt pulling out all of the knives treatment. I thought that was
The
That
knives
was
were great.
I think probably funnier for book readers than it even was for show viewers. But I think it was a funny scene regardless, and it perfectly makes sense for Moraine's character. I thought that was very fun.
I think it makes much more sense to not have Matt here. Again, like to Grace's point, the ensemble is so big, and this is supposed to be concentrated and focused without also, Matt's character arc has been like uneven as we've lost to Barney Harris and gained to Donald Flynn, who is owning the role. But tonally, I think just the space he occupies in the show, it would pull so much weight and severity from Rudy on if you have him like cracking jokes with Rand as they're kind of walking up to these crystals. I think that it's ultimately a much better choice. And even to the point of like Moraine and the knives, like we dialed in on that a little bit of like, it's very funny, it's hilarious, and it's a good gag, but it also is a little bit of like a deep reflection of like this woman who has been powerless for the last season of the show. Like, no, I will not be powerless again. Like, I really kind of loved it. I think not having Matt here is the right call. I feel like the arches that he ends up going through can probably be placed in a Panarch's palace in Tanchico, not too much further along from here, and we can fulfill everything we need for him geographically elsewhere.
Yeah, I feel like I sort of came to that realization after we recorded last week, was like, well, if he's going to Tenchico and the idea is that they're on the hunt for all of these, artifacts of power from the tower, I'm terrible at visualizing. So it's like, in my eyes, it's like a big doorway. I don't know what it actually is, but like, I don't think they carried a whole doorway across, but I don't know. He could certainly find a doorway to go through, or maybe it will look like something else. Maybe it will be a little portal. But I think it makes a lot of sense for him to be with, especially, and we talked about this last week, I think, but like him being with Nynaeve and Elaine on their adventures makes a lot of sense. He's doing that for a large portion of the books. And so being along for that ride, and then probably having some kind of end-ish of the season moment where he goes through and has his own climax, I think makes a ton of sense to me.
One of the other things, sorry, Rich. One of the other things I wanted to know was like, this is coming from like, I'm basically going to ask this question and then get you two to answer it more so than I'm going to make an affirming statement, which is there a way of like, part of, I don't think this is important that it's Rand who sort of saves him, but I do think that there is a way in which the way that the show, when it started, the idea that like, oh, any of these Two Rivers folks could be the Dragon Reborn, as opposed to the book, my understanding, right, from my memory, is that it's like, oh no, like it's like we think it's Rand. Yeah, it's Rand. Yeah. And so doing that, and actually just to like some insight into like one of the press requests that I had gotten for the show was specifically saying like, we have a bunch of like women actors on the show who we like, and they're sort of like framing that in terms of the thing as well. And so I do think this idea that like Matt could go and enter sort of that door, and then like Nynaeve or Elaine, I think most likely Nynaeve, being the one to like save him rather than it being Rand, I think only seems to play more into what they're trying to do, which is not that Rand isn't kind of very important. He gets this basically almost this entire episode to him, and the fact that he is the dragon is still the theme of the show, but this idea that like they're all they're all the weave rolls around all of them, they're all important. I think actually there is something to like, Matt can go do that over here, and Nynaeve can be probably part of his experience doing that in a way.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. I don't mean to like say anything definitively. I am speculating along with you, Grace, but I think that again, like the art of adaptation, you guys I'm sure talk about it a bunch, but we have to lose stuff. There are different strengths to the medium of television, and to that point, I think that it's the right kind of change, because we started with the whole beginning of the season of Matt being like, Nynaeve, you can help me. If anybody can help me, you can help me. This is Nynaeve's role, the healer, the wisdom, right? And so we're able to like triple down on that archetype. I've seen like some criticisms about the costuming that like they're all color coded, even when the Shido showed up in this episode. Again, lest we don't, these desert people dressed in black. So we can like easily as new viewers identify the visual storytelling tropes that they are using. So having the healer river, the wisdom of the two rivers, that man has been like, you're going to help me, right? Be the one to like cut him off the rope, will just triple down on that archetype, on the themes that they're trying to present. And it feeds the show's ecosystem much more naturally than like bending over backwards and like convoluting ourselves to reach these book moments that don't fit the narrative that we are telling in this series, right? So I'm 1,000,000% with you. I think it's a great insight.
Can I follow up, Taran, on something that you talked about? You brought up the point last week, and we sort of talked around this. Is there is a section of time where Moraine is not on the show, and we sort of were talking through the idea that like, is Amazon really going to lose Rosamund Pike from being, you know, on the show? My argument is she's obviously incredibly sort of attached and likes this property, and the fact that she actually is an executive producer on the show means that she probably executive producer, and she's like doing the narration for the books, means she can be attached to it and still do press in a way maybe that's still like, you still be involved in the show and get a paycheck from the show and all, and you know, whatever, whether or not they can put her in marketing, whatever. Rich, do you have a sense of that, about whether or not like, do you,
there's been a lot of discussion about this for folks who know the series, right? I mean, it's a really big moment when Lanfear kind of like football tackles Moraine through the red arches on the way back. It's really great. There's a great GIF out there. Go search that. It's one of my favorites. I've seen a lot of people speculating it will happen at the end of the season. I think those people are crazy. There's no chance the Wheel of Time ends. It's like precipitously unsure season 3 with Moraine off the board. I mean, I guess it could happen, and I would be shocked. And I've seen some like suggestions that the end is going to be crazy, and we'll see. But I feel like it's going to be a Jon Snow redux. Oh my God, Jon's dead. 2 episodes later, oh my God, we've resurrected him. You know, the thing that we can do in text is like sideline characters for a long time and bring them back a long time later. I mean, books are just much better at conveying time than week to week television show. So I imagine it's like within the context of one season. And if I'm hedging my bet, I'm guessing like they are not doing it until a season 4. If we get to a season 4, it would be like an early move season 4, take her out by the middle of the season, she's back in play.
I mean, I think that they are doing the work to set it up, right? Like this
whole, for
whole,
sure. Yeah.
like the wise ones talking about like, oh, she's not supposed to know. And then literally seeing the visions of her being killed by Lanfear over and over. It to me implies that they are building it up for the end of the season. And that maybe like that makes sense, because then you have an entire like year or 2 away from the show where in your mind she's gone.
It feels like wait. Yeah. Yep.
And then you can bring her back maybe like at the end of the next season, or maybe even sooner. And it still feels like she's been gone for a long time.
It's just a bummer because she's the most famous person in the cast, you know? Like it's like,
we got a Soraya Agashtalu now, even though it's a small part, but I mean, she's like, she's got some name recognition. I hear you. I think that I believe in Rafe and like the creative team have the confidence to do it. I don't like believe for a second that the money people would let them. I guess it's the cynic in me talking, you know?
I mean, you know, I feel like the show has become pretty ensemble at this point.
Oh, for sure.
And, you know, if anything, like, you know, having their Sean Bean moment, like, could be a good thing, like for the press of the show. Like, hey, look, we're not afraid of killing off characters. And so, you know, I don't know. I'm very interested to see what they do with it. Because I mean, because quite frankly, even if they did bring her back like a full season later, like that's still way ahead of schedule.
It is way ahead of schedule. I mean, to me, that's the way that ideally you probably do it, is the Bran treatment rather than the Jon Snow of like, let's just run a season without her. And I think that you could do it. To me, the show has always been an ensemble. I've seen a lot of book readers that have taken umbrage with like putting Moraine and Lan so kind of forward in the narrative and like using their stars to market their giant $1 billion project, right? But it makes sense. You need stars to sell projects in this way. I think especially something that, while it's not obscure. The Wheel of Time is like pretty popular in the fantasy fiction space. If you're not in the fantasy fiction space, it's definitely obscure just as a book series, I think. I don't know. I just am so cynical about everything in the kind of like streaming space and this modern age of TV that I don't have faith that they would do it. But I think that you're onto something, Taran. That would be the right way to do it.
Mm-hmm. You also you reminded me briefly of another one of my small criticisms of the episode, which is when the Shido show up, because they walk up and they're like, "Oh, look, it's the city," and then they're like, "Oh no, it's people are here," and then they look left and there's like 10 tents. Yeah. Like, you didn't see this walking up? Like,
yeah. Can we talk about the person who's this names? I'm so, but is it Bear? Like the
Bear? Yeah.
You know that she's married to Jaime Lannister. It's my favorite thing.
Oh, that's freaking awesome, dude.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
I really like some of the Aiel delivery. Much like I have been accused of in podcasting, it's coming off a little bit stilted sometimes. Like it doesn't all land with as effectively as I would hope that it would. But I really like Bear. I think it's great casting, right? And a few of the scenes, like Bear and Moraine giving them that final send off, like go now into Rudion. That was like a really powerful moment. I loved it. And another dumb little note of like the old tongue. We get a couple of those flashback scenes that are all in the old tongue. And whenever we do these fictional languages, there's like the risk of going hard Klingon, and like we did the thing, but maybe it's not that actually like delightful to listen to. The old tongue sounds like music to me. Like I really like listening to the dialogue in the old tongue. It just has a good phonetic kind of energy to it.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay, so what else from, because it was a very focused episode, so I feel like there's not like a ton of extra
the big
stuff.
Like book spoiler stuff. I don't know if you want to talk about the Angreal, the like setup of the Sakaran and Kalendor.
Yeah, I think that like there's some so basically, to set this up, if you're not like a deep spoiler person, there are some pretty significant implications from this episode, which have been hinted at already in a couple of previous episodes this season, that imply that there are that they're kind of simplifying the world in the same way that they've seemingly limited the amount of Forsaken. They're kind of limiting the amount of super powerful artifacts. And instead of there being like these
dozens,
right, like because like basically there's Kalendor, but then there's there's also this other thing that's very powerful, and they're both pretty cool, but it seems as though in the book, in the show, they're going to kind of simplify and just do Kalendor and the Sakarnan, I think is how it's pronounced, and they're going to be like the two most powerful artifacts for men and women, and that does have reaching implications for like the ways that those work, but I think that they're probably pretty, you can work around those things. It's just, I'm interested to see how they do personally.
I think you can utilize them and play the other, the artifact you're talking about. It's called the Choden Call, and physically it embodies, like, if you've ever seen like the World's Fair, like Atlas in New York, like they're these giant constructions. They are enormous, like physical statues, these huge excavations that would entail probably a lot of money for a pretty big special effects shot, right? So I think that like not having to build these like gigantic edifices and rather being like, check it out, we got a sword made of glass and a big marble, like that probably is a lot more accessible for them to like conserve some resources as they're going to achieve these things. But I thought it was a good setup. It's kind of sad to say goodbye to the Choden Call, but to your point, I think we can use these items in place of it to fulfill that moment if we ever get there,
Yeah.
And then of course also somewhat related to this actually, Asmodean, the Forsaken,
RIP,
is may or may not still exist, but there is supposed to be a bit of a fight going on that has to do with the Choden Call. that I assume is not happening, period. And then also, or perhaps happens in tier in the future. I'm still not sure if we will see Asmodean. He is, he doesn't exactly, like, he's relevant to this portion of the story, but I would say wouldn't be the hardest person to cut out overall.
Asmodean, a beloved Forsaken, the man who walks in the light, the man called Prez, that's his guy. He's the bard Forsaken, he's got a guitar, he's cool. He antagonizes Rand a lot, which is very fun. We like it when people give Rand hell, But my vote is Asmodean is gone. That 8th spot has to be Demon Dread. Like, if there's going to be one more Forsaken, it's got to be Demon Dread. I won't say more. Grace has not completed the books. Demon Dread is not around for a lot of the books, but the moments that he's around for, I think, are really important, more important than Asmodean, dare I say it.
I think basically where I am in terms of that, I, without knowing a ton more, I do feel like it's easier to think about getting rid of a character who in some ways becomes more part of the ensemble than a character who, like Ravine, is a little more an
antagonist, right?
Like a very clear antagonist. I think it's easier to think of the sort of as much as I think that the show, it's funny because the show is, and the themes of this, I think, are both incredibly complex and also at times simple. And I don't know I don't know if that sounds completely wild, but if we're talking about the way in which what we learn specifically in this episode is the way in which a hole gets bore into the pattern, into the wheat, and then allows basically evilness, the dark, to basically he can't get through it, but he can access it. He can now access the regular world, and that's really what most people are. You're either trying to support that work or you're trying to fight against it, and that obviously seems extremely simple when you put it like that, and obviously it becomes more complicated in the way that there are magic items and things like that. But I do think there is a world where I think probably, and I think it's you can argue this is disappointing and you don't like it, but the ways in which a character like Asmodean, who becomes sort of very connected to Rand, there's a way in which is that more complicated than the simple actually you're evil, bro? I don't know. We're I mean, it's not that we don't have those complicated things. I think Gabriel is an example of the way in which he's interacting in the show in a way that's he is evil and he's doing things, but also people will view him as, so I don't know. I think it's interesting.
I mean, I jump right to Lanfear too, right? I think that there is,
they are doing complicated
part of what
stuff,
is so compelling about O'Keefe's performance in the role. We go back to Mir and Sedai, and what she's talking about with him there is cold fusion. I want to democratize power. Imagine a world where not just Luz, Theron, Telamon, and the Aes Sedai get to wield power unchecked, but you and your family and your children, right? She wants to give free energy to the world. It's like a cold fusion gig, and there's something so noble about that. But then even in the dreams with Rand, where she's saying I love you, I may well have been enchanted here. I certainly am. But I think that there is an intention that we as viewers are supposed to be questioning how authentic she is while she sits there and engages with him. I don't know. Really interesting stuff.
Can I ask you? Sorry, no, you go ahead, Taran. You go.
Well, I would just say quickly in terms of Asmodean, I think that reasons to cut him are that he fulfills a lot of roles I think that have already been fulfilled in the show. And we're in the books too, where it's he is disguised as another person. We're already seeing that with Ravine and Gabriel. He is a Forsaken that they keep close and that they are working with, but then you can't fully trust him all the time. That's already happening with Lanfear. He is teaching Rand how to weave. That is something that we kind of need.
Well, Logain, though, right?
We already teased some with Logain. So, that is something that could theoretically be replaced. And so it's having another person who's being disguised as another person, who is can we trust this person? Can we work with them? It does feel a little repetitive for the short amount of time they have on the show. And also for what it's worth, I think, and this is sort of true in the books, but there's more time to get here, but it it does kind of defang the Forsaken a bit.
Oh,
It had that
yeah.
effect on me when I read the books for sure. I was
I
like,
mean,
oh, these
like,
guys are not that good.
a lot of those early Forsaken are just getting knocked over like bowling pins, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? But yeah, Asmodean being like such sort of a chump, like I very much felt the same of like, wait a minute, we're taking these people that we continuously talk about as the most dangerous living beings on the planet, and we're like inviting them into the tent to hang out and like play folk songs with us. I mean, it really does, I think, rob power from the idea of the Forsaken, right?
All right, Rich. I asked Rafe Judkins. Well, I feel like I hinted that, like I said, because Rafe and Natasha O'Keefe are together, I was like, I think Lanfear might be the best Survivor player. And I feel like, of course, Rafe is gonna be like, yeah, I agree. I like, because he's with Natasha O'Keefe in the room. Like, he's not gonna be like, no. And she wasn't really like, she doesn't feel like wasn't really like super aware of like Survivor. Who would be the best Survivor player in the Wheel of Time?
That's a really good question. It's hard for me to not say Lanfear, and I'm talking about the show version of Lanfear, who I'm so
100%.
like taken in by. But she is a little mustache twirly to the point of like simple archetypes. If we have to like convey it, like if you trust Lanfear and then she like takes you out at the final four, like you deserved it, right? Like you're the frog and the scorpion in that move. So I think I kind of can't, but also like I think I just am gonna stand Lanfear. Yeah, let's just call it. I'm gonna like second you. That's probably not as interesting. Maybe I'd give an asterisk to Matt as a pure agent of chaos, right? I think also like deep cut Book Matt, like Book Matt just trounces everybody at a game of Survivor because like he's got the luck, baby.
Luck,
He's
yeah.
winning every freaking
Yeah,
carnival
that's true.
game out there.
That's
Probst
true.
is yelling, "Look at Matt go!" You know, it really.
Cawthorn with
Matt
the
balancing those balls on his
Carrying his
Ashitara.
tribe on his back.
Yeah.
yeah. We said Moraine too, but I think Taran's right that she has no social game. She can't lie. She's like,
she's
yeah,
touchy. Yeah, she's
dead.
done. There's
Yeah.
no way. She's mean, man. People don't like
Yeah.
Moraine. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
I feel like Lanfear would be a great Big Brother player because
I agree.
it's a game where you can be a little more like solo, and it's more like you can Big Brother is a game where like you can be strategic more so than Survivor, where you really have to be more social
I
also.
agree.
Well, Big Brother is also a game where like your showmans can have some like real power and legs beyond your actual placement in the series.
Oh, people
right?
would hate
and so
the
that's
Roman.
like a full tilt like Lanfear maneuver. I'm not here to win. I'm just here for you, lose. You know,
The number of Rand showmances he'd be in the from the book of Big Brother would be too many, Taran.
This is a
People would
question I
hate
have
it.
for you guys, spoiler wise. Do you think that if we move forward with the show, we're going to go into the full polyamorous Rand relationship dynamics? Does that feel like part of the DNA we're exploring?
I think so. I mean, I think that's what they're setting up with Elaine and Avienda, is that like this is going to be a more modern take on like a, you know, polyamorous I think I've seen polycule.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
I'm
But
not gonna
I mean, I
go
think it
for
is
it and be wrong.
polyamorous still like applies to the terminology. I just feel like Ruark, especially like he's I don't know. There's a whole thing with the Aiel and like the multiple like partners and that kind of like saturating itself in Rand before he leaves the waste. I've seen a lot of people talking about Rand and Egwene like still being connected and in this relationship is very different from the text. But I think it's an improvement. I think it plays more authentically than the abruptness that Jordan uses to kind of like truncate and shift Rand's relationships in the book. I feel like the show is like firmly planted in that space, but I'm just surprised we haven't moved faster to get there, I guess.
Well, and there are a couple of hints, I think, in this episode. One is that Egwene is specifically told like your path and his don't align, essentially. And then I could be reading into this, but it really felt to me like the performance from Avienda in Ruidian after she's had her visions. There was a subtlety there that felt to me like she saw some stuff about her and Rand, and now there's like this tension that exists, and like just I don't know, the way that they interacted just felt to me like she's trying to deny it, like no, this is not what I'm gonna do, but now she's not gonna be able to get it out of her head.
Shades of Min there. Yeah, Taylor and Prez said the same, that like stinger with Avienda saying goodbye to him at the end read a little bit like, gosh, I might be starting to like you, and I hate that I like you. I like, okay. Yep.
Yeah, I think that without knowing where a lot of it goes, because of where I am in the books,
Mhm.
my feeling is like where I am at, it doesn't it doesn't change anything, and I think it works. I mean, I do think it's like it's a little much in the books to just be like
I
everybody
agree.
loves Rand,
Mhm.
everybody falls for him. So unless and I think like to the point I was making earlier about the way in which like they are not trying to decentralize Rand, but they are trying to create a little more of like, the
To
ensemble
empower the
nature.
rest of the ensemble, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that like there's a way in which like that, unless they're doing it to get ahead of the way in which like I feel like it's like a smidge antithetical to be like it's a female, and there's a way you could do it without it being like that, but like it feels a little regressive to be like it's a female empowered show, but then also they're all in love with the one guy and they all marry the, like without knowing where it
Oh, I get
goes.
it.
I actually like am more on the side of like I don't want it to go there, but I'm saying that with the ignorance of not knowing just how important any individual relationship can be and whether it matters that it's like romantic and not platonic.
Even regardless of like the lore and the weight of the relationships and their long-term impact. I'm just talking about like culturally where we're existing here in like March of 2025 and like where the show has planted itself in this kind of progressive space that I think it has an opportunity to do a much better job presenting the idea than Jordan ever did. Because to your point, I really love the series. I would not say that it's flawless. And I think one of the great flaws, again and again and again, are the way that Jordan depicts a lot of the romances across the series, Taran, right? Like it can read often like a little bit of like 16-year-old wish fulfillment type energy in the way that he's writing
we
about these
we
things,
talked
right?
about it being Arrested Development last week, that it's relationships read out of middle school of like
I
you're
think he's
smelly, and then it's like,
Yeah,
oh,
I
but I
think he's
love you,
great at doing
yeah.
like certain things, like incorporating this cultural diaspora to build up the people of the Aiel, like pulling from Sioux tradition and all of these kind of like Bedouin traditions and so much different stuff to build these things. But when it comes to the interpersonal interactions, sometimes he misses and he misses big. So yeah, I just have been curious. It's a perpetual conversation.
Can I ask a question? Because I don't think I've seen this yet, and it sort of like blew my mind because I come at this, Rich. I talked about this last week, that I actually come to this show from I tried to get into it by reading the books, had a bit of a tough time because it's just like dense. Watched the show, then went and read the books, and like I'm the thing that you
Yeah, I
were describing
remember.
at the top of this, Taran, about being like not visualizing stuff. That's why I sometimes need something to anchor me. And to me, like when I'm reading the books, I'm literally picturing like Yosha because
Mhm.
that's my interpretation of it. So there is one. I don't think it's like I think I can say it. It's not the suit, but like, is Tom gone from the show? Is Tom gone? Is
No
he
chance. Tom's
He's
back.
coming back, I believe.
okay? All right.
Yeah.
I don't
He
know
was
where.
such a great actor and he explodes so big. And I think he has a pretty important role. I'm curious about his end goal. I won't say more given where you're at, Grace, but I'm curious about like Tom's ultimate destiny in the series. But he's Tom Merrilin, man. He's Merlin. He's the Merlin in the King Arthur
I mean,
story.
I
We're
wouldn't be
definitely bringing him
surprised if
back.
they ran into him in Tanchico.
Yeah, I think you're spot on.
Because
Yeah.
that's kind of the crew is like
Mhm.
Elaine, Nynaeve, Matt, and Tom. That kind of
And Tom has
vibe.
history with Elaine, which is like important, right? Tom was like, we met Queen Morghese this season. Like Tom was Morghese's old lover, and that's like a pretty big note. The connections to Elaine, like
Yeah,
Tom,
Olivia
I think
Williams being on this
is
show
too
too
important to lose.
feels big. That feels honestly, that too. Going back to the Moraine thing and the Rosamund Pike thing, the fact that they've like put Olivia, they've cast a
I'm
huge name to
so
play
glad that
Morghese as well. Yeah.
yeah, I'm so glad they got Olivia Williams. And Morghese is like a character with a terrific story moving forward, and it'll be really fun to see her get to occupy that space.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's about it. Anything else to bring up?
No, as you said, it was a very like focused episode. So in terms of like, we really stuck with one story, and then I feel like talked a lot actually through like book change stuff that we might have, we did a lot of that in the first portion. So yeah.
Yeah, no major big thoughts about the book spoilers. We talk about it a lot over at Screen and Page. So if you want to hear us like wax poetic about all the book stuff, you can come listen to us over there. I'm just so taken that they were able to synergize a loyal adaptation of ultimately what is 2 chapters of the text while adding a lot of kind of great choices from their own creative department that I think in many ways, to what we've said over this last hour and a half, really enhanced what's already an incredibly strong couple of chapters in the books. A lot of people, this is book 4, The Shadow Rising. The chapters are literally the road to the spear and then the dedicated. It's like chapters 25 and 26. And I just thought it was a great fusion, incorporating some new ideas, giving us something better than we expected from the page is such a delightful treat in this show. I'm overjoyed, and I can't fully articulate just how happy it makes me.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us here, talking about episode 4 of The Wheel of Time. We will be back next week to talk through episode 5. I'm definitely excited to see where things go from here, to continue with the various storylines in the season. Perrin in the Two Rivers, Elaine, Nynaeve, and Matt in Tanchico. And who knows what else? The fallout here near Ruidian. Excited to see all of it go down. So tune in next week for that. Again, in the meantime, check out the Tastemakers, all of the plugs we've already done. Rich, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. I love talking about the Wheel of Time. It's certainly like what motivated me to finally get in front of a microphone and express my thoughts in a public forum. So I love to talk about it anytime, and I really appreciate you guys inviting my opinions into your corner of the world as you're making tastes out there.
Thank you. It's honestly, it's just like, I don't know if I've expressed this. I think I have expressed this already, but like, it's just very cool. The Wheel of Time has been like in my brain since I was a very young kid. So like the fact that this is, coming to life in any way is really cool. But this episode in particular really brought me back to first reading it and just like the cool ways in which you can build a world where like a lot of fantasy novels, and I've read a lot of them, they'll like this whole thing would be like the intro to the series. Like here's all of my intricate cool world building I'm gonna load you up on up front, that I have zero interest in, but the way that this is sort of brought out through the story is just so cool, and it was really cool to see it in TV form. But that is what we have for you. Grace, anything else to plug?
No, that's it. Yeah.
And Rich, what was it? Where can people find your podcast again?
I'm at DM Philly in all the places you want to find me, but I'm not really out there that much these days. At Screen Page Pod, or the social media Screen and Page Podcast. Just go give us a search on Spotify, Apple, all the places. You will find us. Me and my cohorts on our adventures. We're breaking down the Wheel of Time and associated media.
All right. Well, that's it then. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we will see all of you next time.